enough. These words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here, this opening to the life we have refused again and again until now. Until now. I suspect that the gospel writer John would really like this poem from David White, because the Gospel of John is not preoccupied with some kind of future that is to arrive. No, he's not concerned about where you're going when you die, whether you're heading off to heaven or hell. John is preoccupied with the now. Now my soul is troubled, Jesus says today. Now is the judgment of the world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. Now. The theologians use a fancy word to describe this. They call it realized eschatology, which is, again, a fancy way of saying that what matters most is not something coming in the future, but what matters most is what is now. I have to say, John would in no way understand the kind of religion that we experience on television or throughout our culture that sees faith as primarily about reserving a place for you in the next life. Choose Jesus and then you get to go off to heaven. Don't choose Jesus, well, you know what happens to you. Well, John doesn't talk about heaven and hell. I just got to be honest with you. If you want about hell, read Matthew. But John doesn't talk about hell. He's not particularly interested in the afterlife. His concern is about the now. Now is the time of salvation, or as John would probably put it, now is the time for eternal life. Now also is the time, according to John, for judgment. Now is the time for crisis, which is what that word judgment really means. Today, in the life and the calendar of the church, is a now kind of time, which is why today Jesus says, now my heart or my soul is troubled. Something very big is about ready to happen, something that has to do with the very purpose of Jesus' life. And this is a big, phenomenally consequential moment. This is a moment of full of what life is all about. This is the moment for Jesus to die. And in John, this is not a sad moment. After saying, my soul is troubled, Jesus quickly moves from troubledness to confidence. And he says, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, for it is this reason that I have come to this hour. The purpose of my life is about to be revealed. The glory of God is about ready to shine. Now, I got to admit to you, I struggle with John's perspective on the cross. Crucifixion does not seem like glory to me. Now, I find Mark's notion of the cross as abandonment, sadness, and horror as much more convincing. But the church, in all its wisdom, and sometimes we get things right, gives us a variety of perspectives on this event that we call the crucifixion, which, by the way, is why you need to come to our class that's beginning next week, where we're going to talk about why did Jesus die. And we're going to get a wide variety of perspectives. But for John, it's not about horror or abandonment. It's a matter of glory, because it is, for John, love written large. It is love lifted high. Note what Jesus says today. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. What a vision of universality. The cross is love that is like a magnet that will draw all people to itself. Wow, this love isn't just intended for those who raised their hand at the crusade and made Jesus their personal Lord and Savior. This cross-shaped life is like a magnet that draws all people to itself. All people to the one lifted high on the cross. Now is the moment for the glory of this love to be shown. Now, the way that John sets up this now moment of greatness is really quite fascinating. Our text for today begins with what are not inconsequential words, and you may have just passed over those. I tried to, and by the way, I read it to indicate these aren't inconsequential words. Now, among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. You hear that, I hear that, and I said, oh, that's great. I mean, the appearance of the Greeks at the party probably means, lots of baklava and hummus and lemon chicken and spinach pie and feta cheese, all some of my favorite foods. I'm excited by this vision. Well, that's not really what's going on here. That isn't the point. A Jewish festival is being celebrated, which means only one part of the world is present. The arrival of the Greeks, another word for Greeks, the Gentiles, in a symbolic way, and John just loves symbolism, means now that the whole world is present. And remember, what is about to happen is meant for the whole world. You know the verse, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that all those who believe in him will have life, eternal life, life with God. Not in heaven someday, but right now. Eternal life is not in John about where you go when you die. Life, eternal life, according to John, is about life that matters, life that is good, life that is always full, life that is deeply connected to the source of life, God. That's the kind of life we get in Jesus, John is telling us. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have personally found John's message to be true. My experience is that in Jesus there is so much life. Oh, sometimes it's different than the life promised by the world. Sometimes it challenges the way that the world attempts to give us life. In fact, sometimes it turns life upside down. But to be in Jesus' community, to be in Christ, as Paul would put it, is to be in a deeper place. A place that is not just about, how good you look, how much money you got, how powerful you are, how well you do at the polls. And while any of those things aren't all bad, and they will provide you some good temporary highs, they won't connect you to a life that is now really full and really meaningful. They will not connect you to that which is eternal. Yeah, they may stroke your ego for a little while, but you will often find that those things are never enough. That you constantly have to buy more, get more, receive more praise, massage your fragile ego more, and more that is especially not content with now. That unsettled, constantly grasping, a frequently malcontent and often, too often, violent life is what is revealed by the cross as empty and disconnected from that which is eternal, which is why Jesus today tells us that now is the day of judgment of this world, that now is the day when the ruler of this world is driven out. Judgment for John is not about going to hell when you die. But judgment for John is about a crisis that is created when you and all the systems of the world do not live out or trust the self-giving love of God. Let's face it, it's a mess when love is not lived out. It's a mess when self-preoccupation runs the show. It's a mess when you live in light of never enough. It's a mess when the systems of oppression, hatred, violence, and narcissism run amok. The current situation in Gaza and in Ukraine and in our own political system discloses that. For John, the cross reveals that mess, shows what happens when the great love that God has for the world is not lived out. And like all good 12-step programs, John believes that until the light shines on the mess, nothing will get better. The mess won't be addressed. So the cross then for John becomes like a giant mirror. It reflects the truth to us. And only, and the 12-step programs understand this so much better than often the church does, it's only the truth that can set us free. The cross in its truth-telling and in its great display of love sets us free. And that freedom is, John would have us know, a matter of dying. Very truly, I tell you, Jesus tells us, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains a single grain of wheat. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Now, John is telling us, now is the time for Jesus to die. Now is the time for all of us to die. And this is the truth. We are not going to get where we want to go. I know this is hard to hear, but we're not going to get where we want to go without dying. This is the insight that Richard Rohr calls necessary suffering. Rohr says that there are only two things in life that truly transform people, and I think he is right on the money. He says there's only two things: great love and great suffering. Seldom do we grow. Seldom do we experience real life without some kind of pain, which is why, in my opinion, some of the most remarkable people in the world are those who have been through so much. Their pain, their dying, if they've allowed it to take them to new places and not derail them or make them angry or bitter, truly can transform them. By the way, this is not an invitation to seek out pain and suffering. To think that the more I suffer, the better person I will become. You know, my wife's been going through a lot of physical suffering that's really driving her and me crazy, and we've had enough of it. Trust me, she's not going to advocate, you'll be a better person if you just go through a little more pain. That's not what I'm arguing for. And in fact, if you're thinking like that, knock that kind of thinking off. But often in your life, you will note, frequently it's after the fact, that some of your pain and suffering is what has brought you here. Some of that pain and suffering is what has made you a very different, more loving, more compassionate person. Dying is often necessary for living, and that is especially true when it comes to your self-obsessed, self-protecting, vulnerability-avoiding ego. Only if it dies and if it is buried will it produce great fruit. Now is the time for that kind of dying. Now is the time for letting go. Now is the time for vulnerability. Now is the time for giving up yourself to something bigger than yourself. Now is the time for the seed to be buried in the ground. And believe it or not, at least from the perspective of John, now is the time of glory. Now is the time for love to be written large, for love to be lifted high on a cross. We have refused this love again and again. Maybe now will be different. Maybe the magnetic field of the cross will be so strong that we'll just give in to it. That we'll just give in to love. Now.
now.